paper in Think Journal, Cosmic Horror and the Philosophical Origins of Science Fiction by Helen Cruz. Why do we actually feel like insignificant in the face of the universe? People feel like they had a sense of significance, and then they think about the universe, and then they lose their sense of significance. I don't know why they do that. I don't base my sense of worth on like the size I am physically compared to like the entire universe. Like that's not something I think about in terms of like, well, why am I good? Well, I have very big size compared to the universe. It's like, yeah, that wasn't what I was thinking. And so I don't understand this. It's like, well, we're extremely small compared to the universe. Sure, but like it's like it's just a matter of scale then. And I don't understand this, but like in some sense, I get why people are that way. They want to feel like they have some sort of relation to the world, and when they're that small, they have not much of a relation. You have something for this, yeah. Anne says bees are more important than humans, and they're like mini. It's a meme to think that idea that self-promulgates. Yeah, it's like, this is the interesting thing. It's like people have ideas wrapped up in like where their place is in the universe, and then when they think about the universe in a different way, it kind of screws with how they think of their place in the universe. Size doesn't matter then? Well, size does matter, just not always. Like sometimes relative size often matters, okay? And sometimes, but not always. But yeah, it's like the overview effect. Oh, interesting. Let's take a look at what Vipers has provided with us. Let's put this here. The overview effect is a cognitive shift reported by some astronauts while viewing Earth from space. Researchers have characterized the effect as a state of awe with self-transcendent qualities precipitated by a particularly striking visual stimulus. Yeah, so you see the little pale blue dot, and you're like, holy shit, that's all of the Earth. That's all of our stupidities. It's all the good things and bad things. So it's like, yeah. Okay. See, I wonder why people have this, though. Like, I wonder why. I'm sure if I got myself up into space and looked at the Earth, something would happen to me. I'm not, like, saying I'm somehow very different from other people, but I just maybe a little less on this side. It's all about followers, exactly. It all depends on which followers. I put a link, I mentioned the other day in one of the chats that one of the music streamer I follow, called Kimmery Sky. She has about, on any given point, like 90 to 150 people in chat. So this is not what I would call an extremely big stream. However, she has some extremely generous chatters. Last stream, 2 streams ago now, someone dropped 5.1 Bitcoin, which at the time came out to $152,768.27. So they were like, I am funding your next 2 albums or whatever. Like, I'm funding your next 2 years of like streaming and stuff. Yeah. So it's like, it's not just the quantity of followers, quality matters too. And that's the thing. Like, it's not just size, it's, not just the size, it's motion of the ocean. It's like, it's how you use it. Sometimes it matters more what you're doing with it. So, Unreal Brian says, Shatner now is reputed for subtle thought, had a strong response to his trip to space. Yeah. So, Lumpy says, yeah, right. As Unreal Brian says, people were told humans were the universe shit for so long, and then they discovered we are not. It betrays a hubris, that desire that our lives have to influence the whole cosmos, and we cannot, and then people get to trust. Yeah, I think hubris is the exact right thing. And it's not even like it's a bad hubris sometimes. It's like, it's sort of is built into our society that like we matter. And then when you get away from society and you're looking at how small everything is from a distance, it's like you even realize that like just even the basic sense of like society and the way it values itself is wrong and has hubris built into it. I did that this afternoon, Vipers. I'm sorry about that. It's just no one had ever done that before, and I didn't realize it was on. I figured it had been off to begin with, but it is now off. Someone tipped 5.1 Bitcoin to, I'll give her a shout out because she deserves it. Kimmery Sky. So yeah, if you want to go follow a fun music streamer, she does something called Live Learns. You can just tell her, like, unfortunately she's gotten too popular, too many people are dropping money on her, but it used to be you could just like go into her stream and be like, hey, could you play this song? And she'd be like, I don't know that song, but I'll play it. And she would play it, and she would play it good. It was very impressive. And so you'll actually see musician at home in chat every so often. So, and that's her like main mod. So like I'm over there, and they found that I stream once or something. Maybe I did a shout out, and he started coming by. So it's like, sometimes he's here. Frank says every evolved organism has to be hubristic, not being that considers its life unimportant and will last. That's fair. Everything has to at least think it deserves to like, continue on at least for the next moment. But it's like, why should we get like this crushing sensation when we consider the vastness of the universe? It's like, what matters to us here on Earth. Yeah, but like considering the universe, like I'm not worried about the physics that's going on at like cosmic scales. Like physics at that level does not freak me out because there's nothing like that relates to my life. And I'm okay with that. It doesn't make me like, oh, I have no way to interact with that physics. It's like, yeah, so what? Like, why did I care about astrophysics as a relation of value to my life? And as everyone's saying here in chat, like, of course people had to do it. Yeah, someone tipped 150. It was 152,000, 5.1, $152,000, like 700. So it was closer to 153,000 at the time. Yeah, I appreciate that, Unreal Brian. Like, I think I might be on the outskirts of like normal people. Maybe I'm not normal, but I'm on the outskirts, or I'm farther away from the average at this point. No, not to me, Udemy. It was to the person I just shout out, Kimmery Sky, who's a music streamer, and so she can sing. And it's like everyone's been asking when I tell them, can you sing? I say, no, I can't sing. It's like, so if like someone tipped 150K, basically said, hey, I'm funding your next, album or two or whatever. So it's like, yeah. So yeah, they were like, I'm going to fund your album, like the next music video or whatever. So I was like, okay. Frank says, I like the universe being vast because I'm hubristic. Look at all the stuff I might influence. Exactly. Butterfly effect. We change the earth. We send out some rays. Some aliens see it. And like the whole universe now changes because of that. Exactly. And that might be you, Frank. This might be broadcast to aliens on a very distant planet sometime. And they're like, haha, look at those silly humans. And the funny things they were doing on Twitch. And they'll be like, look at this guy, Frank. And he likes that we're watching this right now. I mean, to be fair, like, I wonder if the people from 2,000 years ago, actually, I'm sure they thought about, like, people in the future. Because if you think about the ancient Egyptians, there's that old statement that Cleopatra is closer to our time than she was to the building of the pyramids. The pyramids had been around for thousands of years by the time Cleopatra was alive. And so it's like they knew that civilization goes for thousands of years. So things you do can have impacts for thousands of years. And that's just on Earth. And like compared that to the size of the universe, yeah, we can actually influence the whole universe. You have an extraterrestrial on your garage? That's kind of cool. Is his name Alf? Like, do you have an Alf? Oh, no, it's a lean on your house. Okay. So, here we go again. But anyone who's just picking this up on the YouTubes later, you'll see why we're discussing this. Steve Jobs wants to put a dent in the universe. Is that like an actual quote? I mean, you see, that's hubristic. It's like, why? What do you mean you're going to put a dent in the universe? Come on, man. Yeah, the pun, it hurts. No one accused Steve Jobs of being humble, I don't think. So, the eternal silence of these infinite spaces frightens me. Blaise Pascal and Thoughts Penses. We now live in a universe composed of billions of galaxies, and for the most part, we rarely give this any thought. We go about our lives as people have done in the past. I don't know about that, but mostly. We don't leave the Earth for the most part. Still, you might have reflected on the vastness of the universe, perhaps when you visited a planetarium or watched a documentary or even looked up at the probably light-polluted night sky and felt a dizziness, a vertigo. That experience is cosmic horror, a sense of the sublime that makes you feel both small and insignificant and a part of a huge interconnected whole. Once we realize the universe is enormous and that we're but a tiny speck in that vast world, we need to recalibrate ourselves. We need to find meaning and significance in being the tiny speck we are. As I'll argue here, science fiction helps us to come to terms with the cosmic horror as the history of philosophy shows. As a literary form, science fiction originated in philosophical speculation about the universe and our place within it. This is fair. The first work of science fiction that I can obviously point to is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, where people are doing super science to create other humans, where you can put people together out of spare parts. And Mary Shelley is definitely philosophy adjacent. Her mom was a hardcore anarchist, Mary Wollstonecraft, and so these are people, and her father was Percy Bysshe Shelley, a poet. These are people that were very well educated in philosophy of the day, and so Mary Shelley was basically, if not a philosopher herself at the time, very closely would have probably read a bunch of it. Brian says, Eugene Thacker wrote a trilogy on the philosophy of cosmic horror, which I haven't read, but I have a friend who likes his work. Draws particularly on Lovecraft. Well, Lovecraft basically, I think, invented cosmic horror. But definitely sci-fi, I think, comes out of this philosophy of science of the last few centuries. The past centuries have seen a steady expansion of our picture of the universe. From the 18th century until the 1920s, scientists were debating whether the Milky Way was the only galaxy or whether the distant nebulae they could glimpse through telescopes were also galaxies, each composed of millions of stars. Kant was a proponent of the latter theory in his 1755 Universal Natural History and Theory of the Heavens, and he wrote in the Critique of Pure Reason, quote, "It is not merely an opinion, but a strong belief, on the correctness of which I would wager many advantages in life, that there are also inhabitants of other worlds." End quote. Before the 16th century, it was common to view the world as a compact ball of neatly nested spheres. Yeah, and don't let anyone tell you that that the Earth was ever flat. This is the way it was viewed in the West. I think there might have been some places in China where they thought the Earth was flat. I don't know. Correct me if anyone knows the truth about what the Chinese ancient feelings were on the roundness or flatness of the Earth. No one in the fucking West thought the Earth was flat ever. It was always nested spheres. Always. Except maybe a few idiots. And they were like, you guys are idiots. It's obviously spherical. This is what everyone always thought. So it's very annoying when people say flat Earth. It's a completely modern phenomenon. Yeah, thank you, Unreal. It's the Greeks were studying the curvature of the Earth. Anyone that was even remotely civilized in the ancient world in the West thought the Earth was spherical. So it's the current level of insanity is just ridiculous. Okay, around the Earth, the moon, planets, and stars circled in a slow and stately dance, each attached to its own crystalline sphere. Yeah, so it was you can see, I don't know if you can see this, but it was the moon was on this thing, and there was the stars were above it, and the sun was there too, and it's everything was on sort of these rotating spheres around the Earth. Eratosthenes, yeah, it's these people, they were not stupid. They didn't have all the details, but they weren't stupid about what they were thinking. A flat Earth is dumb. And we had old maps that showed the end of the world. No one actually believed it was the end of the world. They knew it was the end of the map. It just meant don't go there because it was dangerous. There's a joke in map making. It says they put "here be dragons." And people are like, oh, were there dragons there? It's no, the map makers were making a little joke. It says, we don't know what's over here, and it might be very dangerous. Be careful. And that's why they put "here be dragons." No one actually thought there were dragons in the old world, or very rarely. And map makers, when they put that there, it was just sort of tongue-in-cheek. We don't know what this is. Be super careful. Yeah. Okay. The stars lit up the night sky from their fixed positions like precious, but ultimately tractable jewels. Ooh, this is creepy. See, I also like philosophy that has pictures. Pictures are fun. This geocentric model, exemplified in Ptolemy's Almagest, allowed the ancients to explain a wide range of astronomical phenomena. As Copernicus noted on the revolutions of the heavenly spheres, medieval Muslim scholars such as al-Battani, al-Bitruji, and Ibn Rushd had already poked holes in the geocentric bubble. It would not take long for that bubble to burst. Heliocentrism held within it the seeds of a vast universe because the problem of stellar parallax. As a theory of the universe, it faced initial difficulty because it predicted a parallax, an optical illusion where a distant object appears to move when the observer shifts position. What explains the lack of parallax? And anyone who has if you don't know what parallax is, it's like, you can see more of something when you go around it. So the idea that like you can't see more of like the stars or whatever, it's a little bit confusing if it's like not that high up. Like they didn't know how far away like the moon was. They didn't know how far away the sun was. And so the idea that like, when the earth was rotating or was rotating around us, the fact that you couldn't see around the thing was a little bit confusing. And that's what they're talking about, this parallax. You should be able to see like more around like the left or right as it moves relative to you. Okay, so Copernicus argued that the cosmos is enormous and the stars are very far away. See, this is hard. Very far away is very different. Like here to like, London is very far away, but here to the moon is like very far away of a different magnitude. Close things move fast, far things move slow. Yeah, but see, this is the thing. That's exactly the thing. There's far and then there's like really far. And this was the same problem when you're talking about evolution and biology. There was a long time ago, which could be like, 50 years could be a long time ago. But if you're talking 50 million years, that's a different kind of long time ago. Eudaimonia says, literally the shadows at different latitudes measured from Egyptian obelisks. Yeah, I mean, this is how, like, you could figure stuff out like that. You could figure out, like, that things were bending, like the light was coming at a different angle at different times of day, like a few hundred miles away. Yeah, Eudaimonia says, measure at the same time of day at the highest point of the sun in the sky. Yeah, so if you're on the surface of the earth and the sun's over here, it's like, and so over here, something's sticking up, you're going to have a shadow length of this length, but if the sun's here and it's like right there pointing at it, you're going to have like a 0 length of your shadow. So if like something's on the, I don't have anything good to demonstrate. And so you could figure out distance, and then by shadow length at the same time of day, if you do it right at noon, then you could say, well, the earth must be curved at this angle because the lengths will keep getting bigger and bigger as if you were on a curved earth. Because if it was flat, it would be a certain length of shadow, but it would be linear. But if it's curved, the curvature would make for a longer and longer shadow as you get farther and farther from the equator. And so you could figure this out using ancient techniques. It's not that hard to do. They did it 2,000 years ago. It's like not that crazy. Okay. So this is the problem. The notion of far and very far, like cosmic distances aren't far, like in terms of like what we understand as far. They are unbelievably far. Okay. Later authors proposed that each star contained in its own solar system or world. The Italian Dominican friar and philosopher Giordano Bruno was among the first to realize the daunting implications of this picture. When he was burned at the stake in 1600, it was not for his adoption of heliocentrism, but for heresy. Still, Bruno grasped the philosophical significance of heliocentrism, professing the universe was not the world, that is the solar system. Rather, the universe was infinite, those magnificent stars and luminous bodies, which are so many inhabited worlds, great creatures and superlative divinities, those which seem to be and are innumerable worlds, not very unlike that in which we find ourselves. So yeah, so if you're saying there are other life out there, that will really piss off people who think that we are the most important life. So if there's more important life someplace else, that doesn't really work. Related, I believe this picture was taken in Hawaii when their world was exactly overhead. Let's see what Vipers has gotten for us. Aha. Oh yeah, this is weird. It looks like a video game, but it's real life. Yeah, it looks like the shadows. Yeah, it looks like they have no ray tracing or whatever. Shadows are off. Yeah, so the sun is directly over these poles, and so there's light coming down on all sides of them. And frankly, for someone like me who has never lived near the equator, this looks extremely weird. I'm sure it's normal to people out there, but to me, this looks extremely strange. And you're like, what the fuck? It looks like a video game where they don't have shadows, because shadows cost more processing power to have than to not have in video games. But yeah, it does look so weird. So yeah, that's cool though. Thank you, Vipers. But like, see, that's how hard it is to test for the curvature of the Earth. You just need a few spots on the Earth and measure the distance between them and measure the shadow length at noon exactly. You can do it. It's not like it's crazy. Like, it's not that hard to measure how curved the Earth was. And it wasn't, they were off by a bit, but it wasn't like a crazy amount that the Greeks were off. They were off by like, probably a lot if you consider like it's like tens of thousands or millions of miles or whatever it is. But in terms of like orders of magnitude, it really wasn't that bad. So like as an estimate, not that bad. And someone can look that up, actually, like how close they were. It really wasn't so bad. Okay. And Phil says, like when I went to England at 18, I thought it was amazing how the sun went down at different times because it was 10 p.m. and it was still bright. It was mind-blowing because the sun comes up and sets at pretty much the same time every day, about 12 hours of light. Yeah, because Anne is in like pretty close to the equator. And it's like, yeah, that's exactly it. It's like, it's significantly weird when you've grown up with one of these things your whole life. And then all of a sudden it's different. You're like, this is a very different sort of thing. It's like it was under 1% wrong. Yeah. Thank you, Diamonia. Yeah, Bill Bryson book on it. It's like, yeah, that's how close you got 2,000 years ago, maybe more. Viper says, today, most scientists set the Earth's circumference at 40,096 kilometers, or 24,901 miles. This gives Eratosthenes' estimate less than a 1% error and excellent approximation of the Earth's circumference. Yeah, like, and the fact that people, like, you could not only do the theory that, like, it makes sense that we're a sphere, like, in terms of, like, abstract thought, and, like, there's no, like, end of the Earth you're just gonna fall off of, and then like where is it like sitting on, but the fact that they could measure this sort of thing using like good science and get that close a thing, and that we nowadays like deny this, it's like mind-blowing. It was the worst that the sun came up around 8. Yeah, like when I leave the New York area, I'm like, what's going on? Why is everything different? Like, it's weird. I was out in the southwest of the United States once, and the land in the southwest is very different than like the like landscape here in the east. And there's no trees, and there's fewer buildings, and you go out into the desert a little bit, and it freaked me out. And let me tell you why it freaked me out a little bit. It wasn't the scenery. I'm perfectly okay with empty, like, open spaces. I'm not agoraphobic unless it's cool. They have these cool, like, structured, like, rocks off in the distance. In the Northeast, there's always shit around you. There's always trees, there's always hills, there's always buildings, there's always people. It is noisy here. When you're out there, it's quiet. I'm not freaked out by quiet, but there's nothing that makes an echo. You don't realize that you can hear like a little bit of echo all the time when there's stuff around you, all the time. So like when you're talking in a room around here, you get like a little bit of feedback. When you're even outside, you get a little bit of feedback. It's bouncing off the trees, it's bouncing off like the cars, the buildings, whatever. Out there was no echo. So when I said something, the sound just dissipated. It sounded like it disappeared on me. It was like in a blanket that was like a sound absorbing. Like I felt like I was wrapped in sound absorbing like a foam, where I'd speak and my voice would just disappear. And that was very strange to me because that had never happened, where I was in a place where there was just no stuff that like could make any sort of like reverb on my voice. Very weird. No place for bats. Yeah. Viper says in Sweden during the winter is only light for 4 hours a day between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. and obviously the opposite in the summer. Yeah, I mean, that's very strange to us who are expecting like a full day of light, and instead you're getting like 4 hours. So yeah. So this is why fantasy is fun. You get to talk about these worlds that are very different, like not just like different like you can actually do on Earth, but even farther difference. But yeah. Okay, so while telescopes could show Jupiter had moons, they weren't powerful enough to establish the existence of exoplanets or intelligent alien life. Early modern people looked at the moon with yearning, so close yet so unreachable. To make up for this, they invented fantastical tales of what life on the moon would look like. The astronomer Johannes Kepler wrote a short novel, Somnium Dream, published posthumously in 1634, which features the Icelandic witch Fjaxhild and her son Duracotus, who visit the moon and its strange realms by communing with demons. Soon thereafter followed the publication of Francis Godwin's Man in the Moon and Cyrano de Bergerac's 3 novels set on the moon. Cyrano de Bergerac paid some attention to the practicalities of reaching the moon. The narrator, also named Cyrano, ooh, fun, The narrator, also named Serrano, straps bottles of dew to his body and eventually succeeds with a kind of space rocket. So, okay, so this is a view on the moon from an 1783 story by John Wilkins depicting pumpkins used as dwellings to secure against wild beasts. So that's cool. They were living in, pumpkins on the moon. Frank says, I feel like I've heard that Kepler's novel got his mom tried as a witch. Something like that could have happened. I don't know. They didn't really give a fuck when they were angry with you. They could try at you for you or your family for anything they wanted. So, okay. So this big old quote: once we realize the universe is enormous and that we're about a speck in that vast world, we need to recalibrate ourselves. We need to find meaning and significance in being the tiny speck we are. Yeah. The church wasn't very chill back then. You have to take a little bit of a wider view of the church. Sometimes it was and sometimes it wasn't. Like the whole thing with Galileo was more Galileo's fault than the church's fault. Like he was kind of a dick. But other times it was not so cool. What's it called? Witch burnings here in the US. Like it was a lot of just like targeting people you didn't like, and they were using religion as a tool. And so, like, was it really the church, or was it really just, like, assholes in the community that were, like, that wanted to try people for witchcraft? Yeah. Maddie says Galileo pissed off the wrong people and then kept pushing and then refused to even let his friends help him out. Yeah, that's the short version. But, like, yeah, basically Galileo pissed people off. He was told to, like, Galileo was told, we're going to help you out when we get in power. Like, literally. He was, like, going to be set up for life. They just said, we just have to get into power first, so you have to hold on for about 6 months. And it wasn't longer than 6 months because this was a known quantity when certain, like, votes were going to go through. Galileo went behind his buddy's back, screwed his buddy over, and then, I think in losing power, his buddy couldn't protect him or didn't want to protect him anymore. And so this was, like, entirely of Galileo's own doing. And so, like, he wouldn't let people help him. He just had to go and do it. And it's like, yeah, the church did bad things at certain times, but like a lot of the stories that you hear in popular media that like Galileo was screwed over by the church, he was like this great man of science. No, Galileo was an asshole at the time. Maybe not all the time, but he was an asshole at the time, and it wasn't the church's fault. And hello, Maddie, and thank you for the input. Appreciate it. So, and if anyone's really interested in it, there's a great blog called the Renaissance Mathematicus who has done a lot of good work. He has a lot of blog posts on this. Okay, so 18th century authors also gave free rein to their imaginations. Filippo Morgan imagined various scenes in lunar society, such as pumpkins used as dwellings to secure against wild beasts. Yeah, that's this one up here, as can be seen in figure 1. Vipers, you're an asshole. Do I deserve to die? Well, consider this. They didn't kill Galileo. He was already an old man at the time, and he lived in kind of a mansion, and they said basically you're under house arrest. So he didn't actually have that bad of a life. He was under house arrest in a mansion, and he wasn't about to go traveling anywhere anyway, and he had all this money and friends, and so basically he was still throwing dinner parties. He just couldn't leave. So yeah. Yeah, the math and science was an excuse. Let's see what Ivan has for us. What am I clicking on? Why must you waste your time with magnifying lenses, Galileo? To find out if it's possible to see something as small as your dick. You'll pay for that. Pay to see your tiny dick? You wish. Yeah, so this is kind of yeah, basically, Galileo was kind of a dick. So, and no, Vipers, you don't deserve to die because you're an asshole. Maybe you just need to be wiped up a little bit and cleaned with a bidet or something, like squirted with water when you're dirty. And yes, I'm laughing at my own joke again. Yeah, if we killed all the assholes, there'd be very few people. And there'd be a lot of things that weren't as fun. Some assholes are a lot of fun, so. That's your fetish. So good. So we're all in agreement here. Yeah, I want a bidet. my cousin bought a place 2 years ago, and one of the toilets had a bidet, and I'm like so happy every time I get to use it. And there would be no more gays. Yeah. In this magical, whimsical world, gigantic gourds are habitable. In deep space, the only limits are the limits of our imagination. At the edge of scientific knowledge and the philosophical questions it prompts, our motivation for science fiction arises. Yeah, hi MDD. I know, it's just one of these on the list of things I would get done if I had more brain space. But at the moment, I've just been doing things that I've been doing, and I haven't added to anything at the moment because that's how burnout works. I can do certain things and not other things. It's like, yay. But yeah, one of these days I'll get one. Okay. Humans have now visited the moon, but the mystery of distant worlds remains, as does the existence of alien life. While Kant thought it highly probable that space aliens existed, the existence of extraterrestrial life remains elusive. Science also offers plenty of other mysteries, such as the limits and possibilities of artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and more. I'll now review a few examples of early works that are at the intersection of science fiction and philosophy to demonstrate the philosophical origins of this literary genre. As we will see, science, this looks like something cool. So this is the original front piece of something very long, Entretiens sur la pluralité des mondes, engraving by Jean d'Olivar from something in France. So this looks like all the worlds in like, so yeah, so this is like, you can see little, I don't know how well you can see it, but you can see like little solar systems in like a whole range of other solar systems and stuff. So fiction is inherently philosophical as it speculates about the fringes of our scientific knowledge. Yeah, and so this is why the next, Star Trek: The Next Generation has so many. It's like this is in the line of this sort of the limits of our understanding in science and what happens when it breaks down, and that's what a lot of things that philosophy talks about. A wildly popular early work of science fiction is Bernard Bouvier de Fontenelle's Conversations on the Plurality of Worlds. This book is set over 5 evenings, each featuring a dialogue between an unnamed philosopher and Marquis as they stroll in her gardens, gaze up at the stars, and ponder the full implications of the new astronomical picture of the world. The starting point of their conversations is an idle speculation by the philosopher that every star could be a world. I wouldn't swear that it's true, but I think so because it pleases me to think so. The Marquis, who is clever but entirely ignorant about astronomy, presses him to say more. When he seems reluctant, asks, "Do you think I'm incapable of enjoying intellectual pleasures?" As the philosopher remarks, all philosophy is based on 2 things only: curiosity and poor eyesight. If you had better eyesight, you could see perfectly well whether or not these stars are solar systems, and if you were less curious, you wouldn't care about knowing. So this, Ivan Neal, this seems like a person after your own heart. It's basically just a question of how the resolution of our devices at this point, and our curiosity. I imagine Lumpy cringing to what? Not having a bidet? I don't know. With better senses, we could simply peer up and see what these solar systems look like, but we can't, so we need philosophical speculation. In the successive evenings, the characters examine the solar system and the possibility of life on the moon and on the planets. Eventually, they leave the solar system to ponder the possibility of life in other solar systems. When the full implications of this picture sink in, the Marquis expresses cosmic horror. Here is a universe so large that I'm lost. I no longer know where I am. I'm nothing. Each star will be the center of a vortex, perhaps as large as ours. As many spaces as there are fixed stars, this confounds me, troubles me, terrifies me. My pronunciation of the French. Yes, I apologize for my pronunciation, except for very boring English. I don't do that well. I'm sorry. Yeah, you were right, Vipers. However, the philosopher replies, "This puts me at ease. When the sky was only this blue vault with the stars nailed to it, the universe seemed small and narrow to me. I felt oppressed by it. Now it seems to me I breathe more freely. I'm in a larger air." Thank you, Olympia. I know people do get a little touchy about completely butchering certain words, but I appreciate it. In the final pages of this short work, the philosopher and the Marquis discuss the Milky Way and the realization that it consists of thousands, millions of stars. Just as the moon resembles Earth, the Milky Way stars each resemble our sun, as shown in the front piece of the book. Could the allegory of the cave be classified as cosmic horror? That's a good question, because it is almost of the same sort of structure where you keep getting a larger and larger world. Yeah, maybe. Like, that's like a seriously good example, because it's just like the universe in cosmic horror would be the next level of, getting out of the cave, is you're getting off the Earth. Like, that'd just be the next one. And so it would just be the next logical step to take, really. So, the imaginative exercises of the philosopher and the Marquis point to the power of science fiction to familiarize us with the utterly strange and alien. Pondering astronomical phenomena gives us a sense of cosmic horror and makes us dwindle into insignificance. But Fontenelle sublimates the cosmic horror into an optimistic cosmopolitanism. We are among the many potential creatures who inhabit a wondrous universe. Telescopes were not the only scientific innovation that prompted science fiction and philosophical speculation due to their inability to elicit cosmic horror. Microscopes, by giving us a sense of the tiny, did much the same thing. That's fair. People are freaked out about medicine because you got like those little bugs that can get into you. So that's a different kind of horror. It's not usually called cosmic horror, but you can definitely do like body horror at the very small level. In the 17th century, people did not have as ready access to microscopes as we do today, and their magnification was modest by today's standards. Yet picture books gave a sense of a world of minute things as vast in its complexity as our everyday environment, with mites and lice looking like colossal mastodons and mold like dense forests. A catalyst was Robert Hooke's bestseller Micrographia, published by the Royal Society, a book with large, luxurious, fold-out images of fleas, urine crystals, and everyday objects such as a razor blade and the point of a needle. Yeah, Robert Hooke basically, I think, invented microscopes, and that's where we get the word cell, because he was looking at like little cells lined up in a row, and so he was looking at like cells like in a monastery or a prison. And so he was looking at the little cells like in a row next to each other. And he was like, okay, these are like rooms right next to each other. It seems the opposite to you, cosmic delight. Yeah, I mean, I think you're with the philosopher in the story here. He's like, we are among the many potential creatures who inhabit a wondrous universe. See, this is more the optimistic Star Trek thing. Like, we can go explore and have fun and see all this stuff. Isn't that great? So yeah, so it's half empty, half full sort of thing. Like the Star Trek Next Generation, we can go visit all these cool places, or is it that we are going to get crushed by things that we don't understand and will just drive us mad? I don't know. Viper says, if I were to breed a new strain of weed, I'd call it Cosmic Heart. That's a good name for a weed. Because like you'd be like, oh god, that would be scary. It would fuck me up. That sounds like it would sell. Porque no los dos, Frank says. The mathematician and philosopher Blaise Pascal considered the implications of both telescopes and microscopes. He invites us to imagine that each atom would harbor an infinity of universes, each with its firmament, its planets, its earth in the same proportions in the visible world. And on this earth animals and finally mites, where he will find again what he saw before and find still in others the same thing without end and without cessation. Let him lose himself in the wonders as astonishing in their minuteness as the others are in their extent. Yeah, so this is the end of the Men in Black, where the whole universe in a marble, and then in that universe you could have another marble and be tinier and tinier still, or going up like cosmically also. So I did not know that went back to Pascal, which is really cool actually, that like Pascal considered universes like within like atoms and stuff. Okay, and wow, I did not know Hooke published a book which is like this. See, this is really cool. You can, it looks big enough on my screen, so like you can probably see this is a flea from Robert Hooke's Micrographia. Like that's kind of crazy that like he published a book back in like the 1600s with like a really nice picture of a mite like this. Like that is kind of terrifying. Like imagine you're saying this is what is living on your dog right now, or maybe on you in like the 1600s. You probably had mites on you, a flea on you, and like this is the sort of thing that you were like, oh my god, I have this on me right now. Yeah, That's like, it looks like Cthulhu. Yeah, like this is like, what year was the 1665? 16 fucking 65. Like, and you're getting like, this is a nice picture of this thing. Like, imagine going to the library, if you had libraries, and seeing this shit, and you're like, holy fuck. Like, oh my god. So, yeah. I mean, and, you know, Pascal was like, you know, I think he was just a few years later, frankly. It's like, when he was writing. Okay. We no longer think that the microscopic world would harbor infinite universes within universes like a never-ending series of Russian dolls. Pascal was probably influenced by his work on infinitesimals in mathematics when he formulated that idea. Still, we can recapture something of Pascal's disquiet when we consider the quantum world, a very strange world indeed, which has led physicists to propose radical views of reality such as the many worlds hypothesis or quantum superposition. All right, Ivan, I'm sorry, you have to forgive Helen de Cruz for that. I don't know how radical you actually think it is. Microscopes and telescopes give us vertigo. When you think of the vast and the tiny, it leads inevitably to self-contemplation. What is humanity's place in nature? Humans seem squeezed between what Pascal called two abysses of the infinite and nothing. Pascal admonished us to contemplate them in silence, rather than to examine them with presumption. It's radical but very elegant. Okay, you're going with the elegant line. That's cool. Yeah, I mean that's fair. It is kind of radical compared to what came before, but like it all works out, which is kind of the whole point of physics. So, yeah. Okay, but if there's anything humans aren't good at, it is to contemplate in silence. Science fiction affords us a way out of cosmic horror. The form of science fiction grants us some power over the vastness of space and the frontiers of science. We can see this clearly in Fontenelle's preface to the Conversations. Fontenelle wrote that he wanted to help educate women in the science of astronomy. To make up for their prior lack of access to formal education, he wanted to write in a pleasing literary style, which he borrowed from the psychological novel La Princesse de Cleves, attributed to Madame de Lafayette. Oh, Lafayette. Okay. Thus, science fiction served as a way to popularize science for women. It is hard to overstate the popularity of the Conversations. It was reprinted and translated numerous times. In its wake, a veritable genre of educational science fiction works was established, including Algarati's Newtonianism for the Ladies or dialogues on light and color. And that's 1737. In a pleasing format of fiction, our cosmic horror becomes more graspable, and perhaps like the philosopher, we are able to breathe more freely, and we are in a larger air. So it's interesting. They're using some of the popular media to, propagate ideas. And I know I grew up on the school bus with Miss Frizzle or whatever that was. It's like I was watching popular shows, and that got me into that. Hey, Rethius, how you doing? We're reading a little bit of sort of public philosophy at the moment, talking about cosmic horror, the vastness of the universe, and its history in relation to philosophy and science fiction. The Magic School Bus. That streamer brain, it's very real. You don't realize until you do it. It's like certain things just start breaking on you. It's like you're like, hey, I can remember Miss Frizzle, but I can't remember the name of the whole story. Okay. Science fiction not only allows us to frame and come to terms with cosmic horror, it also allows us to engage critically with science and its findings. Take Margaret Cavendish's Blazing World, and that's 1666. This story features an intriguing proto-feminist utopia, a society that lives in harmony under the enlightened rulership of a single empress. Various anthropomorphic animals, bear men, ape men, worm men, fish men, bird men, serve as the empress's scientific experts. Lethia says, you know what sucks about the universe? It doesn't have to be comprehensible by a brain manufactured on our planet with the scale of everything. Yeah, that's right. But, I mean, that's part of what we're talking about here. Bye, Ann. Thanks for stopping by. Everyone should go follow Ann. Let's give Ann a shout out. There we go. So everyone go follow Ann if you don't follow Ann. Ann is a lovely streamer and does many, many things on the internet, including stream here on twitch.tv/AnnFernal. And I don't know what she's streaming now, but as was said before, does like a bunch of crafting, was making a dress, also plays video games and just chatting. But it's egotistical to some degree to think we can perceive the details of the universe, says Rethius. Yeah, I mean, I don't expect to understand everything. I expect to learn some things. I'm okay with learning some things, you know? We don't have to get everything right or even everything close to right. We just have to get something of the universe in. We do get something of our world in, I take it. And that's plenty enough for me that we get to learn a little bit about our world. Given the vastness, like, that's okay. We're going to learn something, and hopefully it's, you know, good enough. You need to reference Blazing World in your paper. Okay, well, if you need the paper, you can always type, if you need the references, it's here. This is open access. So there you go. You have this base assumption that we'll be able to get it all, but we have no sources out. No, that's a big assumption. It's called principle of sufficient reason. This is a major assumption in Western philosophy that anything we find out will have a sufficient reason, and that like it exists that we could go find it out. That the principle of sufficient reason says that we will be able to go find the actual reason or something to that effect. So yeah, so we don't have to get it all just enough, says Frank. Yeah. I mean, that's more my position. I actually don't think everything has a good reason. Like, I'm perfectly okay with, like, this cosmic horror thing. Like, I don't care. I know that makes me in the minority. But, like, it's principle of sufficient reason. Yeah. I think that idea you just mentioned is false. It might be false. But, like, this is a base assumption that a lot of people have. That, everything we can go look at has some sort of reason. Yeah. PSR is bogus. Yeah, a lot of people think so. I've talked to somebody, like a good guy I know, like he said he thinks the PSR is right. He says anything we can think of, we can go investigate and find something out about. It's like, yeah, he has this sort of base view that like we can go make progress on all fronts. And I'm not sure that's the case. Yeah, define enough. Well, that's me hedging. He actually thinks you can do it. But yeah. Rethius says, we exist in this universe that is way bigger than our planet by so huge a margin that why would we be physically capable of understanding the complexity that is existence? When you really break it down outside of our perspective. No, like, that's part of the horror that we're talking about here. That it is just way too fucking big for us. Just way too fucking big for us. And that's fair. Like, that's kind of the position here. But we were just talking earlier. Some people say, look, that's kind of nice because it means there's always going to be a bit more. We have a bigger space. We're not going to be limited to our little corner of things. So this is sort of a glass half empty, half full situation. Universe is too small and we're going to figure everything out and be kind of boring. Or universe is big and we're going to, always have more to go discover. Why should the relative size of the universe and our planet have anything to do with it? I don't know. Like, I was saying that right at the beginning of the talk when we were going into the paper. I don't know why relative sizes make any difference. I'm less phased about that sort of thing. But people do seem to think that. And we actually had, like, what's it called? Vipers provide a link about like when people go up into space and see Earth and it changes their perspective. For some reason, getting a relative position on things that was different from what we normally have tends to have some sort of psychological effect on us. And like, whatever. It does happen. The gravity space from the star atmosphere is coming. That makes our lungs and organs. The physical conditions formed our brains. So it's all conditional. Yeah. Sure. Again, half full or half empty. We're not going to get everything, but is that a good thing or a bad thing? Is there always going to be more to learn? That's a good thing. Or are we never going to figure it out and that's a bad thing? Ivan says there's universality of computing. We are only limited by speed and memory, but some things might simply be brute facts with no explanation. Yeah, like you're not going to calculate what came before the Big Bang. Like, never going to. Like, that's something that would be incalculable from within the universe. If you get outside the universe, then you could, like, look at the universe and see what it's doing. But from within the universe, you're never going to have a computer that can calculate what's outside of it. Like, it's sort of thing, like, we're not going to know. Yeah, Aristotle, the overview effect. Yeah, see, streamer brain. Thank you, Aristotle, for bringing that up. Yeah, it's streamer brain couldn't remember. So, yeah, so Frank, this is the relative thing. We can make choices with what we think of right now and at least have some of the effects that we mean to. It's like we can have some relative position within our little world and maybe we're right some of the time. Rethea says, I think bad things is that we're not really able to tell how smart we are as a species on the scale of intelligence that could exist, so we should assume we know nothing. I think that's unfair. We can at least know relative to what we knew in the past. We know a lot more science than we used to. So it's like, yeah, if you're looking at the absolute scale, that's bad. If you're looking on a relative scale, oh, thank you, Vipers. If you look on a relative scale, then we know more than we used to, and we have like computers, and like you can hear me talking to you through the internet and all this stuff. And so like relatively we know more than we used to, but on a grand scale, who the hell knows what that is? Maybe we're the only sentient things that do exist, and so we are the pinnacle of intelligence, which I'd feel kind of sad about, but that's okay. Yeah. We didn't evolve to see reality as it is. Just how useful within our context to see it. There are undoubtedly aspects of reality we didn't evolve to observe or even infer from what we can observe. Yeah, I mean, we're contingent on evolution. But again, and does evolution get to the truth? Maybe not. Maybe it just gets to what's useful to keep us alive. Is there any truth in that? Yes, maybe. But does that mean that's what our cognitive faculties evolve to? No, not necessarily. Maybe we just live, but we don't, like, that doesn't really track with what we talk about. So I don't know. But again, if we were not getting things right, at least sometimes, we'd probably be dead at this point. You just wanted to get the Cthulhusi and the Shagothusi. Yes. I mean, I'm kind of annoyed actually with this article. This is just talking about the vastness of the universe. I wanted like some real cosmic like deities that were fucking with our heads. Maybe we shall get to that. But at the moment we're just talking about like, this sort of like vastness like that's crushing down on us because we're so relatively small compared to the rest of the universe. Completely off topic, how's the air in NYC? Detroit has been awful past few days. Tomorrow's supposed to be bad. Tomorrow's supposed to be going back into the very dangerous range. Today was okay, but tomorrow's supposed to be we're gonna get the smoke again tomorrow. But as of like the last week was fine. Frank says, we don't know nothing. Our current laws of physics will probably be approximate of where they eventually land. I don't even know if that's the case. It'll be something. But like, yeah. Like, it'll be... I'm always on the side of we know less than we think we do, but that doesn't mean we know nothing. So it's like, I agree with we don't know nothing. Like, I think that was a little bit excessive of Socrates. And even the Oracle disagreed, because they said he knew the most, and the most was that he knew nothing. And he was like, okay, that, one thing. So you have to say you know something. Retheus, yes. Perception is fucking crazy. MDD says, the larger the universe, the less actions of humans influence the totality of things, and our estimation of the ratio of what human action can influence totality of all things has got to be infinitely small, at least compared to what we used to believe it to be. I agree with it that it's compared to what we used to believe it to be. I mean, there might be like some sort of butterfly effect, and like our little actions here will eventually affect the rest of the universe in some way. I don't know. But like, given enough time, the things we do here will ripple out, I assume. But like, that's just like some sort of like, a chaos butterfly thing going on. Oh, if anyone here doesn't know our buddy Arisol, he was given a shout out a minute before. He is another philosopher here on twitch.tv at Aristotle. He is a thoughty for thought. He's an ancient philosopher, does a lot of ethics on talks ethics and just life on stream. Ask him anything, and it's a lot of fun, and people quite enjoy his streams. And he's dying of heat because he's in Texas. So just go follow him if you have not. These are our philosophy friends. That's Aristotle. We've got Evolve Yourself, who's here quite often. It's Agni. There's also Ask a Philosopher, who stream like once a month. They're old buddies of mine at this point. And Ivan Neo is also in chat, who a lot of you guys came in on the raid with him. But if there's other people here now, you can also give Ivan Neo a follow, because he's talking science. He's a PhD in physics, talks science and like rationality and a lot of stuff on his stream. Yeah. And I should have a chat for our sociology friends. Infernal was just here, and Shane McInnes, who does sociology and history. But yeah. Okay, so this is fun. Like here, we're saying they were thinking of teaching a wider audience some of the advances in science, and they were doing it through science fiction. That's kind of cool. And so this was like you had an empress with various anthropomorphic animal, bearmen, apemen, wormmen, fishmen, that served the empress's scientific experts. The Bearmen peered through telescopes and microscopes in their examination of the blazing world. Cavendish and her main character, the Empress, is not impressed with these instruments. She thinks they are uninformative and that they cause too much division. She says to the bearmen, "Your glasses are false informers, and instead of discovering the truth, delude your senses. Wherefore I command you to break them, and I let the birdmen trust onely to their natural eyes and examine the celestial objects by the motion of their sense and reason." Okay, so the bearmen hold that their glasses compensate for the limitations of human vision and even reason, arguing that she, the Empress, did not know the virtue of those microscopes. For they never delude, but rectify and inform the senses. In this they echo Robert Hooke, who argued in his preface to Micrographia that microscopes and telescopes would help to restore our faculties, which he believed were negatively affected by the fall from the Garden of Eden. By criticizing that attitude, Cavendish anticipates later authors such as Pierre Duhem or Boston Frosten, who have shown that our reading of scientific instruments is never straightforward, but always requires interpretation on the part of the person using the instrument. Yeah, there's something called the Duhem-Quine underdetermination thesis. It was actually one of my absolute favorite things I learned about when I was in college, and that's Pierre Duhem. And for the religious folk in this group, he was a Catholic philosopher, I believe. And he's one of these last great polymaths of the last century, or the early 20th century, I forget. And so he was actually a real interesting guy, and he did the underdetermination. It's also called the Duhem-Quine thesis, where you can't actually attach the whatever you are talking about in science. There could always be something else. The results in science are always underdetermined. You could always have something else coming in and screwing up the results in science. So, and Boston Frosten is a more recent author. I think he's still alive. He's got to be old now, though. Okay, Cavendish's work reminds us of another role of science fiction that we see from its inception in the early modern period. An opportunity to imagine different worlds and societies, and in this way challenge our own way of life, our own ways of life. It is no coincidence that early modern science fiction blended with another popular early modern genre, that of utopia. We see utopias in a wide range of periods and times, but they became popular in the Renaissance and later on, exemplified by the eponymous novel by Thomas More. Utopias used the plot device of travel to distant lands to help us imagine political possibilities. Much like today, the political situation of early modern people was often stuck in a suboptimal political gridlock, or the opposite, a political turmoil that didn't bode well, as in England, which was gripped by political instability, becoming a republic and then shifting back to monarchy within Cavendish's lifetime. In such a world, imagining a different political constellation in fictional narratives is an act of defiance. Margaret Cavendish's Blazing World is a clear example of such a utopia. It envisages a society with an ideal division of scientific labor, where women could also be experts and enlightened rulers. Another utopia that centers on the scientific experts is Francis Bacon's unfinished novel, New Atlantis, published posthumously in 1626. Science fiction helps us to play imaginatively with the glimpses that science affords. Those are glimpses of a different world, perhaps better, perhaps worse, as we still today imagine in our cyberpunk and near-future works. What can science fiction mean for us today and for philosophy? In 1686, Fontenelle confidently asserted, "The art of flying has only just been born. It will be perfected and someday will go to the moon." This was quite an assertion, given that mechanical flight was embryonic at best in that period. With the space of some 350 years between us, we can take stock of these early scientific fiction prognoses. On the one hand, Fontenelle was right. What people like Kepler, Fontenelle, Cyrano de Bergerac envisaged as a distant fantasy became a reality some time ago. On the other hand, boundless optimism permeates Fontenelle's work, which now seems alien to us. No longer do we envisage, say, flying cars, if only because of the carbon footprint. They seem like a pretty dreadful idea. Rethia says, okay, there's this assumption that science fiction is a relatively recent kind of writing and I just don't buy it. Maybe it wasn't rockets 200 years ago. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It got more popular over time, but all the references in this paper are 350 years ago. That's 350. It's right here. She did the math for us. And, yeah. So, they were dreaming up some crazy stuff. And they just said, flying cars were like, he envisioned that we would be flying. He didn't envision flying cars, or she, I don't know who this is, but like that was the thing. Like they thought of it. Now, this is a little bit weird though, also. Right here, they say we do not envision flying cars anymore. Yeah, we do. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I know The Fifth Element is no longer a new movie, but like that seems like a very near future. And all the cyberpunk, like, say, flying cars. Like, they just won't be gas-powered flying cars. This is a little weird that they said this right here. Yeah, it's not exactly the same futurism. That's a good point. When do you think the futurism that we have is like the contemporary, like, compared to what they were talking about hundreds of years ago, and when did it actually become sort of contemporary? Like I was saying very early on, I don't think you were here for it. I put it closer to Frankenstein, which is in the 1800s. So it's like I put it a lot closer, like 150, 200 years. So it's closer to what you were saying. The concept of flying cars as a concept has been debunked. What do you mean? Our science fiction still has flying cars. The concept that we think it's going to happen anytime soon probably won't happen because we'll kill ourselves if we do that. But like our science fiction still has that. I guess maybe that's what they're saying here. Like maybe you're right, Lumpy. Maybe we don't think we're going to do flying cars like currently, but still I think in the future we think that we're going to do. Yeah. So you might be right, but I'm not entirely sure. Maybe we're a little... Exactly what the author here means is a little unclear to me, at least. Ruthie says, I think what we define as science fiction today is probably limited to Wells and Verne, but I zoom out a bit. There's something that is human, in your opinion. Yeah, I mean, again, where you draw the line is going to be kind of arbitrary. It's going to be, more people might put it closer to the Wells and Verne, but I don't know. Like I said, I put science fiction, like I really think like contemporary science fiction started with Frankenstein. Aristotle says, Lucian's A True Story is arguably a science fiction story and it's from the 2nd century. It spoofed Roman travel stories by writing one about going to the moon. Interesting. But again, what's the concept of technology back in the day? But yeah, maybe. Flying cars are dumb. Yeah, but I mean, we have a lot of drones nowadays. So it's a flying car, it's just not carrying people, and we have a lot of those things. Aristotle says, but sci-fi is hard to define. I once heard and liked the definition that without science, the story couldn't happen. Okay. But like a lot of stuff doesn't happen without science. Like, anything nowadays, the story doesn't happen. It just you need some new science, I guess. Okay. So yeah. You took a ladder right to the moon. Yeah. I mean, we have space elevators coming up in the future. Yeah. Your Diamond says cars are dumb now. Just deliver my every desire by drone. Yeah, see, like maybe we've moved on from like, the idea of like going place with a car in like the air, but like we've definitely shrunk the car down to a drone and given it all the jobs we were gonna do anyway. Yeah. Yeah. Science wasn't always existed. Wasn't always labeled. Yeah, but see, that's the problem. What were they doing in the 2nd century AD? If science existed but they weren't doing it. Maybe it was just kind of dumb luck that the author was using what we consider science. And so it really is just dumb luck to be calling that science fiction. And that's not like really a fair thing to be saying of that author, of Lucian, because it was kind of like just he was talking about certain things which we are now projecting our sort of scientific viewpoint on. But yeah. But there's always dude experiment. Yeah, and there were people doing math. There were people, cataloging the world, doing natural history, and doing like physics and all of this sorts of things. Sure. So like maybe it is unfair to say Lucian got lucky when writing science fiction. But again, this is throwing our modern concepts back on the past. It's always hard to do. A person testing a hypothesis even though they had no idea what the terminology was. Exactly. Like people were doing, they were experimenting with the world. They just may not have had our current concepts. Viper says, I'd argue that the only reason you'd think science fiction started with Frankenstein is that it portrays something we cannot currently do. Before the wheel, a story about traveling thousands of miles would have been science fiction. Would it have been science fiction or just like fantasy? Because like you can travel thousands of miles on the back of a dragon. And that wouldn't be called science fiction. That would be called fantasy. Now, if they invented a mechanical device that worked via some weird contraption that was like, like a kind of a steampunky thing, of whatever steampunky was back in the day, that like you had some flying thing that was like made with like, fire and like whatever the technology of the day in some sort of super science way, yeah, maybe. But just traveling far, like, you could travel far on a dragon, but that would be a fantasy. It wouldn't be a science fiction. And to be fair, we're making bits and pieces, parts of people. We haven't made a full person yet, but we're definitely making prosthetics and like, other bits and parts of people. So we're getting to Frankenstein levels. Unreal Brian says, I do think it's possible to get lost in weeds trying to set a strict genre boundary. Yeah, exactly. Like, if you're trying to do this too much, I completely agree. It's like, but that's why it's like if you're attributing things to people in the past, it's kind of hard to do. We were talking about this before this paper. Like, can we diagnose people of like with modern diseases in the past? I was saying I think it's very It's always going to be very suspect and speculative, because it's not only are we trying to figure out what like their symptoms were, we're trying to analyze their symptoms through the lens of people writing 2,000 years ago when they weren't even talking about things in the same way. But yeah. Well, what exactly, Vipers? What else do I have? Like, if I'm using old tech, then like, is a dragon technology? Like, is science fiction like taming dogs, like having domesticated dogs? Is that tech? And is that science tech from back, science fiction from back in the day? But then like everything is science fiction at that point, and so that's like, this is the thing. What is it? Okay, fine then. There we go. I'm not saying speculation isn't fun. It's just, what are you actually doing at the point? If you're having fun, yeah, go right ahead. If you're trying to be like, no, this person had this disease, or like this is like exactly science fiction or whatever. Like, sure, but then you're using a different definition than me. I'm using it in this way, and if you want to disagree, that's okay. We just have to be clear. In the 23rd century, will Star Trek no longer be sci-fi in our time? It'll be sci-fi in our time, sure, but like, why would you think, like, is fantasy fine? Is fantasy a sci-fi thing where their technology is just different? Because in, say, Harry Potter, and this is a good example because I've thought about this. Harry Potter uses their magic just like we use our science. They have to research it, they study it, and all that stuff. So is Harry Potter a science fiction story just set in a world where their technology includes magic? I mean, according to your definition, I think Harry Potter is then science fiction too, just set in a different universe where the technology is a different one. I really think they considered the same ideas we do for the most part. Well, yeah, I mean, the Greeks had a lot of good ideas, and we think about a lot of the same stuff. Ara says, right, and are the bits about Daedalus in Homer sci-fi? He used tech to escape the labyrinth. Yes, see, that's why this becomes, I agree with you, Aris, I think, because it becomes harder and it becomes less useful to call those things sci-fi at that point. Rethia says, I think the 2 million years past, humans had mostly the same experience we do as some motions, and humans experience from a 10,000 foot view. Yeah, I think we haven't evolved much in 2 million years, or just it's been minor, and so humans have been basically pretty similar. It's just our culture and knowledge have built up over that amount of time. And Unreal Brian says, to some degree, there are publishers' marketing labels. Absolutely. This is what they think it's going to sell as. Viper says, fantasy waves explanations away with magic. Science fiction is speculative based on where our tech is at. Oh, well, see, again, that's just a matter of degree of what's waving versus speculation. Like I said, Harry Potter, if you go read the things they were doing in Harry Potter, that was written in the mid-90s, and some of our tech has gotten there just the same. So it's like, again, it's a matter of degree. Yeah, Daedalus is who I thought of too. Icarus wings are super sci-fi-esque. Yeah, kind of is then. So faster than light travel is magic. There we go. So it would be about what audiences they're aiming for. Yeah, that's on the publisher's thing. Yeah, I've shouted this guy out before. He's apparently a science fiction author. He wrote a book, but he's a good streamer. If you guys like discussions, the Daniel Matt. So we give him a shout out. he's a writer. So you go into his streams and he'll sit around talking for like hours playing video games. But he'll just like sit wherever he is in a video game and talk to chat. And so it's like a just chatting stream with some gameplay a lot of times. And so it's like, if you want to talk about it, like, and he said he brought his book to his publisher, they labeled it sci-fi. He didn't expect it to be sci-fi, but that's what they did, because that's where they thought it would get sold. And he, he's not like super wealthy. He's not super wealthy, but it does sell. He gets an income from his book. He's like published author, and his book sells. So it's like, if you read French, you can go read his books. He writes in French. Yeah, so Lumpy says, good point. Harry Potter magic is a currency, a system, a tool. Lord of the Rings magic is a plot, device, miracles. See, yeah. So that's why Lord of the Rings, I think, is like basically high fantasy. But in Harry Potter is not so clear. It's a little bit of an in-between thing. It being written down, the trap stories were verbal for longer than written. Yeah, well, I always love the quote from Plato, where he's yelling at people saying, look, your new technology is going to cause all sorts of problems because people won't have to think anything. They'll just go look it up. And he was talking about books and writing. He was saying the books, that this new tech, the books, is going to corrupt the youth. So, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so we've got, yeah, again. You can't comment on Harry Potter because you've never interacted with the franchise. Yeah, they're great books. I love them. I mean, it's unfortunate that J.K. Rowling turned out to be kind of an asshole when it comes to some of the social things nowadays. But other than that, I mean, a lot of people still love the works. And, I mean, the latest Harry Potter game was reasonably well received, even by, like, the trans communities. As far as I understand, some people are okay with it. Because I think they had a trans character in it, and the character was even, like, legit in the story. So whatever you're gonna do, we all have to, like, make sacrifices. Well, not sacrifices. You have to interact with people you don't like. Like, hi Jeff Bezos, you have to get paid if you're gonna be on Twitch. How many Harry Potters or Lord of the Rings have we lost to time? That's one of these problems. The science we'll figure out again. Like, if we lose some science, we'll recreate it eventually. Maybe it'll take a while, but we're going to figure out the science eventually. The problem with losing, like, the Library of Alexandria is there may be stories we'll never recover about people and places that we can't imagine, like, from like thousands of years ago, from long lost civilizations, and they could be great stories, and we will never recover those. And that's one of the sad things about the loss of, like, old libraries, because the science and math will probably figure out again. The stories are gone. Like, there may be poetry that was, like, fantastic that we will never recover. Elmer Bryan says, as late as Schopenhauer, he complained that if you spent too much of your time reading, you wouldn't think your own thought. I think you can hear that all the time. It's like people say you have to get out. You have to get out and, like, do stuff. Like, you hear that nowadays too. It's like you have to get out of the house, go move around. Like, it's better for your thinking. So that's not actually. I don't think that's the Library of Encarta. Yes, Vipers. Alexandria. I said Alexandria. I think I did, at least. Aristotle says, I wish you had Aristotle's dialogues or Diogenes' tragedies in Republic. This is the thing. We know these books disappeared. And one of the things, if you go read the Pre-Socratics, I think the reason we have as much Parmenides as we have, it was written down in another book because the author was saying, look, this is an important passage and the books are disappearing. So this is 2,200 years ago, writing about 2,500 years ago or something, and saying we're losing these books and I need to write this stuff down because it's important. And that's the only reason we have these nice long passages, says, because the author was like, I'm quoting this passage, but I'm quoting the entire, like, page or two because I want the book to be reprinted and, like, the important parts to be reprinted. So it's like we've lost good philosophy. We know we've lost good philosophy, and hopefully, like I don't know if philosophy is in the same boat as, like, math or science, where we think we can recreate it. We might not be able to, or at least not for a very long time, and that is a loss. Are we confident that we were thinking our own thoughts anyway? No, of course not. It might be something else. Diogenes is my dude. Farethius, yeah. Unreal Bryce says there's a callback to Nine Still's got your Nirvana cassettes. Yeah, the Library of Encarta, exactly. I love that his approach to all the folks making waves in his time. Yeah, I mean, that was cool. Aristotle agrees. Diogenes had the gall to tell Alexander, great to get out of his sunlight. I mean, this is the thing. We only have a handful of these stories that, like, have come down through the history. And there were, like, books written. And we don't have them. I have my little Heraclitus quotes things here. It's like, So like souls have the use of sense of smell in Hades. Does that make sense? No. But like some of the other stuff is great. Let's not make random conjectures about the greatest of matters. That sounds like anyone could have said that. He was supposed to have written an entire book. We don't have the book anymore. And like he could have said other smart things that we just don't know about. And so it's like, these are my little, so I have this built right into the stream deck, and it's like, that's all we have. We have like, whatever number of stuff it is. And it's like, but there were books we've lost. So like, we don't get this back. Yeah. So it's a good question. Double tape deck, multi-CD changer. You still got the 90s. Like, oh, those things were great. Oh man. Okay. So let's get this done. We've only got this like little one column basically left. What happened to Fontenelle's vision of scientific progress coupled with the virtues of enlightenment, including education for all? Heraclitus? Yes, Vipers. We still have techno-optimism with the likes of Elon Musk and Bill Gates pontificating about the wonders of scientific progress in their slick TED Talks. But with the horrors of climate change, pandemics, nuclear weapons, and other military violence, and rising inequality at our doorstep, it is difficult to regain a broader optimism about science and creating better worlds. In this grim picture, it is useful to look back at the very early science fiction. This fiction was written in a period of intense societal flux, with formidable obstacles even to such initiatives as helping women to be educated. Philosophical science fiction broke boundaries and helped us to expand our imagination. When we feel in a mental deadlock, science fiction offers at least a possibility of a way out. As American writer Ursula Le Guin remarked, writers of the genre are realists of a larger reality. This is a reality that fully embraces possibilities and the power of our imagination. O'Neill Bryan says Diogenes Lost Classic, the complete idiot's guides to wanking in public. Yeah, I mean, clearly. You just go do it. What's there to it? Viper says, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only one war. There's only war. What's at the beginning to? Is that like Warhammer or something? I don't know things. I've shown here that the origins of science fiction are philosophical. Philosophers reflect on the deeper implications of scientific advances such as microscopes and telescopes. Fiction liberates us from the sense of cosmic horror that deep space and the tiny microscopic world elicit because it allows us to speculate freely. Science fiction has the power to help us reflect on who we are and our place in the universe. Yeah, wow, I'm happy I got like a 40K reference. I don't know enough about 40K. No chatter types in the same No Gray stream twice. Exactly. Chat is and is not. Okay, so this is a lot of fun, this little paper. So this was just talking about basically the big and the small and like the very vastly big and the like minutely teeny and the effect it can have on us. So I thought cosmic horror was a little more, what's his name? Jeez, this is what happens. Things go. But, from, yeah, Cthulhu and stuff like that. But, yeah, because they even have like the sort of very Cthulhu-esque picture right here. But, this was really talking about the horror of like the relative sizes to us and how things can get extremely small or extremely large and make us feel disconnected from our reality. And then what we can do about it. So this is fun. What do we have anything like? Do you have any questions, or else we can just get to the review? Like I said, everyone is welcome to participate in the review. Viper says I didn't think there was much insight to it, to more of a timeline of events. HD Wells, Semi-Access, yeah. I think pictures in philosophy absolutely need to be a thing more often. I completely agree, MDD. I love pictures in philosophy, and it annoys me when there are no pictures in philosophy. One of the reasons I even like logic a little bit is because it's like a little picture. Like the little logic symbols, if you understand them, it is like a little picture, what they're doing. Yeah. So I always try to have like sort of at least good examples, if not pictures, because I can't really draw. But all right, so let's get to reviewing this. So as always, everyone is welcome in chat to review. Oh, are we not working? There we go. These are the emotes. Yeah, see Bearman Shove illustrated by a pic of Aris. Oh, well. Okay, and so you can see these are TTTV emotes, BTTV emotes. If you can't see them, I'm sorry. But The brain dance is for fun ideas. I think this had a bunch of fun ideas, and it's always good. It had good pictures. So this had fun ideas. It makes your brain dance. And if you want to use it, you type in the brain dance on the right, like all the way over to the other side. Those are things. Now, the grapes. Did this make big claims that shriveled up? This was popular philosophy. It didn't make any big claims. It made some, like, modest claims about philosophy and stuff. Navel gazing is only for academics. No, this was definitely not only for academics. Ouroboros, did this talk about deep ancient mysteries and big ideas? It kind of did. I think it kind of gets a little bit of a fun idea, and this Ouroboros. So I'm going to give this, yeah. And also, Ivan Neal gave it the scream for existential artistic drama a little bit. It was talking about our place in the world. So that's fair. So, that's a good one too. Golden Turd, was this all style, no substance? See, Vipers, I think, was getting a little closer, saying, it was a little bit of a timeline, but it didn't really have a whole lot to it. So yeah, and Knife, slice and dice your arguments. This didn't slice and dice anything. So we're gonna get a brain dance on this for me. I think we're gonna give it a. It talked about. I'm gonna give it an Ouroboros too. I mean, this was not a deep paper, but like, again, it was meant to talk about big ideas, our place in the universe, how we feel about like the world and everything, but it wasn't anything crazy. MDD, thank you for the review, gave it a vote yay. Also, remember, you can use the vote yay. That's a Twitch, a universal emote, so anyone can do that. I'll give it a vote yay also. Vote yay. You can also give it a vote nay if you don't like it. But I mean, this was a nice article about, there we go. So we're going to give it an Ouroboros for the deep ideas, a little bit of fun. And so Vipers gave it a fun idea, the existential, and a little bit of poop. And you can't get a yay or nay because you need more info in the context it was presented and what she was trying to achieve. Fair. I mean, we don't know. It looked like this journal is just, it said it had a lot of issues before, but these were the first, these are the only ones that were published online. So maybe they're restarting an old, an old IP, an old journal called Think, and doing some public philosophy with it. So we don't know that either. Again, you are free to, of course, I don't care, make your determination. You don't like it, you say vote nay. If you like it, you can say vote yay. That's it. I'll leave the screen up for a bit. But yeah, this had fun pictures in it. I really liked the presentation here. Maybe it was, maybe this topic lent it to pictures. But again, you could have these fun pictures and other stuff depending on what you're talking about. Like, a lot of the things here, like we're talking about, I don't know if you can see through the review screen. You say fine. Okay, so vote yay. Sensei thank you for a review. So also said vote yay. Like, they have like old pictures of like the cosmos from like, hundreds of years ago. You could always throw a lot of like these old sort of things into a paper. Like, I love this Robert Hooke with the that flea from earlier. Let's see, are there any other pictures? No. Yeah. Now, clearly she focused on the, from like the 1600s and 1700s, things from there. But yeah. Okay. Now, does she save like us from cosmic horror and be like, oh yeah, you could also think of it as a lot of possibilities and opportunities for getting ideas out there, kind of very next generation-y, like Star Trek. And that's a good point. You can use science fiction to do like Star Trek level sort of make people feel good about the possibilities in like the universe in the future. And that's kind of a good point here. And I think that was her point. It says not to feel so crushed, and remember that you could also do Star Trek Next Generation sort of thing and feel good about things. Okay. Anyone else want to get their review in? Do it now. Oh, I also want to thank Valpo. Valpo wasn't here today, but Valpo sent me this in a link earlier today as a good recommendation. I think the whole journal looks like a good place to hang out.